Hey guys, Jeff here. Today we're talking solar. And solar and the electrical system for your van can be the most complicated part of the whole build. It can be overwhelming. You know, I have electrical experience. I'm not an electrician, but I've done a lot of electrical in project. I've worked side by side with electricians. So I had a basic understanding of electrical, but even with that, the van build was pretty overwhelming, trying to figure out how to size my system. You know, you can get into electrical audits of all the things you're going to be using in your van and all kinds of mathematical equations of how many solar panels and how many batteries you need and what size inverter. But today I'm just going to give you a simple way to figure this out without all the math, without all the technical stuff. So let's get into it.
We're Jeff and Lisa, and during the 2020 quarantine, we did something we thought was only a dream. We bought a Sprinter van and converted it into the ultimate road trip vehicle. On this channel, we share our van life experience, including van build how-tos, tips, hacks, and product reviews, plus van travel and lifestyle. So if you're new here, consider subscribing.
So when I looked at starting my van build and started looking into the electrical, it was, like I said, pretty overwhelming. You know, I read things that told me get all of the different electrical appliances and hookups that you're going to have and go through and figure out how many amps and how many watts they all use and are they AC or DC, and then compile that and how many minutes a day are you going to run them and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't even know what I was going to be using at that point. Am I going to use an induction cooktop or a propane cooktop? So it was really hard for me to even wrap my mind around trying to figure out all the things I was going to use in my van. So what I did is I went off of what other people were putting in their vans and just kind of as a starting point. And I built it so that I would have room to expand, like the number of batteries or the number of solar panels if I determined later that I would need them. So I'm going to show you how to do that, how to figure out kind of a starting point, and then what areas of your electrical system you may want to consider having expandability. So really the thing you need to determine is, are you going to be driving your van every day? Are you going to be boondocking? Are you going to be in areas where you can hook up to electrical to charge your van if it's cloudy or if you're not going to be driving? There's really three ways that you can charge your battery bank. That is by solar, by off of your alternator in your van, and also off of shore power, plugging into an electrical outlet at a house or a campground that will charge your batteries. Okay? So I recommend having all three because it gives you the most flexibility and it's really not that difficult to do them. So first thing, let's talk solar. So you're kind of constrained by the number of solar panels you can put on your roof. Now, my van's a 144. I could comfortably put 400 watts of solar on my roof and still be able to put my fan back here. So that's one thing you need to look at is how much can I fit. If you have a 170 or a 170 extended, you can put more solar on. But here's the limitation of solar. During the summer when the sun's real high, you're probably going to get, in most cases, 75, 80% efficiency from your solar panels. So if you have 400 watts of solar, you may be getting 300, 350 watts for a good portion of the day of charging capability. So what I found is with my solar panels during the summer, I would, if let's say my battery bank was down to 50%, I could charge it all the way back to 100% by like noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. In the summer, mine was fully charged back up to 100%. But in the winter, as the sun's lower, if you don't have the ability to adjust your solar panels, which most people don't, to point at the sun, if they're just flat on top of your van, you're not getting direct sunlight. And you also have a lot of cloudy days. Also, the days are pretty short. So if I look right now, I'm only getting 12 watts from the sun. It's winter, there's a little bit of overcast, it's later in the afternoon. My 400 watt solar panels are pulling in like 25 to 50 watts is all. So pretty inefficient in the winter. So you're going to need to have another way of charging your batteries during the winter, because the solar, because the days are shorter, the sun is lower, you're just not going to be able to get enough to charge your battery bank. So what I was finding in the winter is let's say my batteries were up at 100%, at the end of the 24 hours later, they may be down to 75 or 80 just from running my refrigerator and a couple of things that are always running in my van. And then the next day, the sun barely charged them up, maybe from 80 to 85%, and then the next day they dropped to 70%, and then the sun dropped them up to 75, and then the next day they dropped to 50 or 60%. And each day, after 4 or 5 days, my batteries were completely depleted because they just weren't getting enough sun. So that's when I went ahead and hooked up my alternator to be able to charge, and the alternator is great. If my batteries are at 50%, I can charge them back up to 100% using my alternator in a couple hours of driving, 2 or 3 hours, and they're all the way back up. It keeps them topped off really nicely. So if you're staying someplace for several days, especially in the winter, or it's overcast and you're not getting a lot of sunlight, then the alternator is not going to do you any good, because you're not running your vehicle. Now you may go out, drive around each day just to charge things up, but it's nice to have a third option. So that would be shore power. I have another video where I show you how to hook up a really simple shore power connection to your inverter charger, and I'll link to that in the description. So my recommendation on your solar panels is you're going to want, I would say, at least 300 watts. So 300 watt panels, or 300 watt panels, some combination of that. I would really recommend going with 400 watts. If you're going to be driving your van every day, then you could probably get away with 200 watts. But somewhere between 200 and 400 watts, the solar panels are not very expensive. You can get them for around $100 per 100 watt solar panel. So it really is worth it to get as many as you can fit on your roof. So anywhere from 400 to 600 is where most people are going to be. It's not as important how many solar panels you have or how many watts you have as your lifestyle, because in the summer you're going to have no problem keeping your batteries topped off with the solar, but in the winter you're going to have a real hard time, probably no matter how many panels you have. So just go with something, I would say 400 to 600 watts is a pretty good starting point. Okay, so that's your solar panels. Okay, so the next thing you've got to figure out is how many batteries you need and how many amp hours of batteries you need. I'm not going to get into the discussion of whether you should get lithium ion or AGM or gel or any other kind of batteries, because I'm going to recommend to you go with lithium ion. They are more expensive, but there's several advantages to them. Number one, you can run them all the way down to 0. So if they're charged at 100, you can run them completely empty. With other types of batteries, you can only run them down to 50%. So you need twice as many in order to get the same number of amp hours. Like a 200 amp hour AGM battery is going to be about the same as a 100 amp hour lithium ion. Also, the lithium ion are smaller and lighter for the number of amp hours. They have a longer life. They're just more efficient. And in the long run, you're actually going to save money by using the lithium ion batteries. Now, how many amp hours of battery do you need? So I would recommend the minimum you would want to go with is 300 amp hours. And you could go up to maybe 600. That's what most people are doing, somewhere between 300 and 600 amp hours of battery. Okay, more amp hours mean you're going to be able to run more electrical. Now there's two types of electrical devices you're going to have in the van. You're going to have DC and you're going to have AC. Okay, DC are things like your refrigerator, your cigarette lighter adapters for your USB plugs, your lights. You got a lot of DC things, your water pump, lots of DC things. DC doesn't use a lot of energy, and so they're pretty efficient. So as much as possible, you want to use DC versus AC. But there are some things where you need AC. AC are things that you would plug in your home. Things like your computer, a TV, a microwave, your water heater. So anything that has a plug is AC. AC is going to use a lot more energy than your DC, okay, in most cases. The things that use the very most are AC appliances that develop or produce heat. Things like an induction cooktop, a microwave, a water heater, things like that use a lot. So just for as an example, most of those things use between like 1200 to 1800 watts. Okay, you run something that, like say my water heater uses 1800 watts. If I flip my water heater on, I'm immediately going to see a huge draw on my battery bank. And in the 12 to 15 minutes that it takes for my water heater to heat up my my water, my batteries are going to go from 100% down to about 80%. So it's going to use about 20% of my batteries just to heat up that water. Other things, induction cooktops, you're using probably around 16 to 1800 watts. Same thing, if you run those for an induction cooktop for 15 or 20 minutes, you're probably going to use 10-20% of your battery bank. Now I have a 300 amp hour battery bank, so I have 3 100 amp hour batteries. Like I said, that's probably the minimum that you want to go with. If I run my water heater, my microwave a little bit, I'm down to like probably 75%. And then I can use my other things in the evening, watch TV, you know, my lights, charge phones, things like that. I'm usually by morning, I'm going to be down around 50%. As a rule of thumb, here's what I'm going to recommend on batteries. At least 300 amp hours of batteries. But if you're using very many heat producing appliances, if you're using the induction cooktop, you're going to want to have 400 to 600 amp hours. Okay. The other thing about batteries is you can add more later. So you can start with 300, and then if you find, you know what, this just isn't quite doing it, I'm going to add another 100 or another 200 amp hours of batteries. It's easy to do that, easy to hook those up. Just make sure you leave space where your batteries are, that you can add 1 or 2 more later. If you're getting value out of this video, go ahead and hit the like button. That really helps us out. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We got a lot of van build videos. We're going to be building another van in the coming months, and we're going to go into a lot more detail on how we do that one, what we learned from building this one, and what we're doing differently in the next one. And then we're also going to be doing a tour on this van here coming up soon. Now, the next area that you need to consider the sizing is your inverter or inverter charger. And I highly recommend that you get a pure sine wave inverter charger. Okay, because a pure sine wave is required to run certain appliances, things like a microwave and other things. And it also, it's nice to have the inverter charger, because the charger part of it means you can hook it into shore power and charge your battery bank through that inverter. Okay, now most people are putting either a 2000 watt or a 3000 watt inverter in their vans. I'm going to highly recommend you go with 3000, because you're only spending maybe $200 or $300 more to go from a 2000 to 3000, and it gives you so much more flexibility. If you're using any of those heat producing appliances, for example, like I said, the microwave, the water heater, a induction cooktop, a blow dryer, a coffee maker, with a 2000, if that thing you use pulls 16 to 1800 watts, and right when you turn it on, it might pull more, you're maxing out that 2000 watt inverter. And if you run anything else with it, you're going to blow a fuse. Let me tell you a story. The first time I took my van out, we used a little griddle, one of those griddles that you plug in. And I didn't realize how much wattage. I didn't look to see how much it would use, but I was using that and it was fine. And then one of my sons came over and said, hey, we've got another one. We need to cook more. We had about 20 people we were feeding. Can we plug this other one into your van? So I said, yeah, sure. So we plugged 2 of these griddles into the van, and within 10 seconds, boom, my main fuse, a 300 amp fuse, blew going to my inverter. And I couldn't really figure out why, so I pulled up on my phone to see how much these griddles were pulling, and they were each pulling 1800 watts. So 1800 watts times 2, 3600 watts. I maxed out my inverter just by running 2 electric griddles. So if you have a 2000 watt inverter, you're going to be really limited on what you can run and really running one of those heavy load appliances will be the max, and you won't be able to really run anything else. So again, I recommended a 3,000 watt inverter. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. If you're running mainly DC and you're only going to be like charging computers, maybe even watching TV, a TV doesn't use that much power, things that don't produce a lot of heat, then you can get away with a 2,000 watt inverter. But if you're using any appliances, again, that microwave, the water heater alone, you're going to want to have a 3,000 watt inverter if you're running a water heater, okay? Electric water heater. So that's pretty simple. The ones I would recommend is Renogy makes a good 3,000 watt inverter charger, and Victron makes a really good one. Those are the two that I recommend. The Renogy is around $800. The Victron is around $1,200. Victron is like the Cadillac, it's the best one. The Renogy is more like the Toyota. It's going to get you there. It's not quite as flashy, but it's a good solid inverter, and that's what I have. Okay, so that's really pretty simple how to size those three major components. Now, as far as what size wire do I need, what size fuses, all that kind of stuff, I'm going to refer you to a website, Nate Yarborough over at explorist.life. He is a wealth of information. If you want to do a full audit on all the electrical you're going to be running in your van, then I recommend going to Nate's website, and he's got a calculator where you can plug everything in and see what you need. If you want to see wiring diagrams, wire sizes, fuse sizes, all that kind of stuff, go to his website. Highly recommended. I relied on it a lot during my van build, and I will link to that in the description. But if you just want a simple way to figure out what you need without all the math, without all the technical stuff, pure and simple, go with 400 to 600 watts of solar, go with the alternator charger, add in shore power if you're going to be letting your van sit for several days, or you're going to go several days without driving it in a row. And then on batteries, go with 300 to 600 amp hours. Again, 300 of lithium ion is the minimum I would go with. 600 will give you all the power you need, to boondock for several days, even without sunshine. And then finally, your inverter charger, go with the 3,000 watt. It's worth a few $100 extra to have that little bit of cushion so that you're not blowing a fuse if you overload it. And let me know in the comments if you have thoughts on sizing for the batteries, the solar panels, and the inverter. Love to hear what you have in your van or what you're considering. And if you have questions, you can drop them there as well. I want to thank you for watching this video. We'll see you in the next one.